This episode of the Wedding Film School Show is brought to you by MusicBed, the best music licensing platform for wedding filmmakers. Head over to themusicbed.com and enter our code WFS on checkout to get a free month on your annual wedding subscription. Now, on to the show.
Shooting well and editing well and creating a great film, as much as we kind of like talk about it's not the most important thing, I do think for a long time in your career, it is the most important thing.
B-roll is something that separates a lot of really high-end elite filmmakers from their peers.
So many filmmakers rip on photographers, and I want to tell them, like, at least they know how to run a portrait session. Mm-hmm. You suck at running a portrait session. Like, that couple thinks you are so irritating.
Too many of you guys are treating the gimbal like an A camera, and it's moving around, it's jittery, it's like, you know, it's not professional.
Yeah, it looks like crap.
It looks like garbage.
Yeah, you want to make more money? Get good content without bugging people.
What kind of film am I trying to make here? Like, how am I taking this and processing this information that's here on site, and what am I trying to output into my camera?
Get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Wedding Film School Show. Back again for another great episode. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, the man, Jason McCutcheon. Jay, what's up, man?
It's been a long time. It's like 6 episodes without you, Jared.
Has it been a full 6? Because you had Kyle on.
3 or 4. I don't know.
You had
I might have
Lindsay on
just
for a
made
couple.
up 6, but it's at least 3.
Yeah. Did you miss me?
Yeah. Those guys are idiots.
Yeah, they know nothing, obviously.
Go back and listen to those episodes.
Yeah. But anyways, we have a great episode today that we've kind of talked through a little bit beforehand, and we think it's a banger. And it's honestly, it's not something we really talk about a lot.
Except for every single day.
Well, probably behind the scenes, but
Yeah.
in terms of like being on the podcast as a topic, it's not something that we really discuss. As you know, what we do is clearly very visual and filming weddings. And usually what we talk about on the podcast is just how to make money and really run a business. But today we're going to talk about how to make better wedding films so that you can charge more money.
Yeah, shoot better, get paid more. Instead of shoot less, get paid more.
Right.
Shoot better, get paid more. And I think, that's what I was thinking in my head is like, we don't talk about it on the show, but we actually talk about it like all the time inside the studio. Every time we watch things, we're talking about how can we cover this better. And, we're lucky enough to have a steady stream of weddings to work on our craft. And so for us, we, hopefully we're learning on the front end. So if you're new, you don't have to. But I think we've learned a little bit. And one thing I know, and I think you would agree with me on this, Jared, is people who are getting paid $10K plus in wedding filmmaking, now correct me if I'm wrong here, are good at shooting.
Yeah, it's hard to hide. I think at one point maybe it was a little bit easier to hide because there just weren't that many great filmmakers out there. But nowadays, I mean, you turn every which way direction and you're just like blown away by the talent. So,
Yeah.
The world of luxury weddings, which is primarily dominated by planners, have taken notice. And the people that used to be established, I think, are getting less work because they just aren't as good anymore, right? So
Maybe. I think at the end of the day, though, everyone's good. You're not going to get you're not going to get where you want to be. Maybe it's not $10,000, but whatever you want to be in your market and you need to shoot well.
Mm-hmm.
You got to shoot well. And like shooting well is a big key to editing well and storytelling well. And ultimately, most importantly, branding and creating a product that people are attracted to. And I think, we talk about sales a lot, right? Not just us, but I think across the wedding education land is sales. And there's some shooting stuff, but I think a lot of it is primarily driven at sales and marketing. I think a lot of people kind of assume like filmmakers, well, they know how to do that, but what they don't know how to do is sales and marketing. And I watch enough film critiques to know, actually, many of them do not know how to shoot. And I don't say that as a rip on people. I say like, if I was to talk to them about their business, the first thing I would tell them is, you should probably shoot better. And so I guess the question I wanted to start with is, what do we mean by shooting better? What is good shooting?
Well, I think it's probably a handful of things. This conversation is kind of hard because there's literally a million things that go into it. But obviously, I think covering an event well,
Yeah.
from multiple camera angles. You know, on a wedding day, clearly you have a lot of different types of coverages you have to do. Your basic event coverage, your ceremony, toast, dances, having the camera angles to be able to tell the story right and well, having your backups.
So like enough gear to get the coverage you need. That's good shooting.
But then also shooting better can also mean shooting a better portrait session. It can mean shooting better surroundings. You know, there's a lot of different types of shooting that I think can elevate your film.
Yeah, and I think better is where you get subjective, but in some ways. But I do think like there's a baseline standard of like this is good and this is bad. And so hopefully in this episode we're gonna kind of like outline some ways that you can shoot better in some areas that we think a lot of people struggle in, or maybe people who are doing really well, they've kind of paved the way to show you almost a template, like do this really well and it will work.
Mm-hmm.
Do this really well. This is good wedding shooting as wedding filmmakers. And by the way, I wanted to kind of premise with this too, which is I think I think you need enough gear, right? I think having enough gear is more important than having the best gear when it comes to shooting well in wedding films. But I don't think it's primarily about like there's like a baseline quality you need. Like if you're shooting a camera that's super noisy, lenses that are just cheap looking, you know, you might need to upgrade. But I don't think this is primarily about the quality of your gear. And I know some people that are like, I always see a guy on a forum who's like, I shoot weddings on red. And then I go look at their work, right? Don't you immediately go look at their work?
Yeah.
Never once have I been like, dang.
That is so much better than what someone else shooting on a 5D Mark IV I've seen shoot a wedding. So
no, yeah. So it's not about just having the best gear or any of that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about coverage and technique and just thinking and being intentional with your camera so that you can tell better stories, kind of elevate the story, maybe more appropriate stories. So anyway.
Yeah. And to prove your point, it's just like, look at the best filmmakers in our industries, the Ray Romans, the Sharons, the people that have been doing it at a really high level for a really long time. I think Sharon, does she still film on a 5D Mark IV?
No, I think she just upgraded, but
upgraded.
but a lot of these people are not
DSLR.
Yeah, a lot of them are not shooting.
So
they don't just go with the trends. They're not always upgrading their gear.
So it's not, you know, you're not working with like a shitty camera, but at the same time, you're not working with a red, right? You know, you're not working with, you know, I think a lot of people tend to think like, oh, if I just had that piece of gear, it would elevate my films. And I think this discussion, what we hope to talk about today a little bit is like, what are the things that are outside of just gear that really make a film feel intentional and really elevate, you know, a film that are outside of just the equipment that you bring.
Yeah. So why don't you kick us up? What is the first thing that I think that we're going to kind of talk about in terms of shooting better so you can get paid more and maybe like, let's kind of set it up with by getting paid more. Obviously a lot of you guys, we're looking at like $10,000 filmmakers. To me, that's like, I don't know if it's a holy grail, I would say, but it's where a lot of people really strive to be. That's like the beginning of like a super high end market. That might not be what's better for you. You might be like a $2,000 filmmaker. You're trying to get to that $4,000 place. So keep in mind, like, you still need to shoot well though. So, but when we say get paid more, it's like, okay, whatever you're striving for, I think shooting better is a part of it.
Yeah. I think the first point that we want to make is understanding the features of the wedding film that you're trying to make and what was sold, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of different types of wedding filmmakers out there. There's a lot of different types of wedding films out there, a lot of styles.
Different types of weddings.
Right. And so, you know, and when we talk about this, we talk about maybe like a ballroom wedding, and that can range anywhere from, you know, the Four Seasons to the Holiday Inn. Those are all kind of ballroom weddings, right? You have your elopement films, which are, you know, on the side of Yosemite. You have your resort weddings, which are usually in, you know, resorty type of areas that are a little bit different than ballroom, but have maybe maybe they have some ballroom elements, but it's also very different because it's, you know, a destination wedding.
Yeah, and those are just locations. I mean, there's even like different storytelling methods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether you're doing lots of audio or like doing, you know, I've lots of just audio that's like in the speeches. Well, what if you're doing lots of audio that's basically happening during first looks and during, like, there's a lot of ways you can tell these stories. And so you got to kind of know what it is you're trying to communicate. And also, you know, this is a thing that I always think is interesting is like a lot of wedding filmmakers, you might be one of two places. One is like you're just getting the basics as a filmmaker. And at that point, I kind of don't think you should worry so much about this exactly. Like if you're showing up on the day and you're still struggling to white balance your camera regularly and consistently, and you're struggling to match your cameras, and just like you're at that stage in development, I kind of think like just nail those basics.
Right.
Like always start with the basics. That's really like, we're kind of assuming you know the basics, but always start with the basics. If you know the basics though, and you're at the place where you have already kind of like you just without thinking or adjusting your exposures and white balances, and you really know your camera well and know what it can do, I think then you start looking at what did I sell this person beyond just 6-minute highlight film? Right. What's the narrative structure? What is the brand? All that stuff.
I think, you know, and even talking to that person who's charging, you know, $1,000, $2,000, like, you know what you're going to get on your wedding day, most likely. Think about the elements that are naturally going to be created, right? Mm-hmm. You're probably going to have some toast. You're probably going to have some moments in the ceremony. You know, maybe there's not really a lot outside of that. Maybe they want to do like a private vow reading. Like, that's cool. Like, know what you're getting. Know what your assets are that you're going to be capturing. So then you can take it in your head and say like, okay, this is the type of wedding film that I can make just based on the assets that I get. That's a mistake that I think we made early on, was like, you know what'd be great is if we took them on a date beforehand, and then we did all these things, and then we're trying to push this narrative that just really wasn't there.
Well, the couples didn't want to buy it. We didn't have the opportunity to make that film.
Yeah, they didn't react well to it. They were like, what are we doing again? You know, and so I totally agree with you, and just like nailing, that's I think what you mean. Maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like nailing your basics, knowing like, hey, I can create this type of wedding film based on just the assets that are created. Maybe it's a basic wedding film, but that's okay. Like, if you nail a basic wedding film, I mean, one of our company has made a whole career the last 13 years and makes 7 figures a year doing that type of wedding film. So
by basic film, we don't mean bad. We mean like chronologically driven.
Yes.
In the edit. You're not creating any moments, minus maybe shooting details. Mm-hmm. But you're just shooting what's in front of you for the most part all day, and you're knowing I'm going to basically tell a story that's this person got ready, then they got married, then they did some portraits, then there was a party. You know, that makes it, I always tell people, it's like, they're just weddings. They're all the same. And they're like, oh, no, my couples are all special and unique. If that's the case, how come I could show up to weddings with 0 conversations with the couples and shoot just as good as you? Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because they're all the same. Mm-hmm. And when you know that, you can make a certain type of wedding film without even thinking.
That discussion is like, it's like yes and no, but like I agree with what you're saying. The couple might be different, of course. Like, not everyone are robots.
But the assets you're going to get from the wedding.
The assets that you get from the wedding are very much the same. Like, people are going to give toast, right? They're going to get married. They're going to have
They're going to walk down the aisle. There's going to be some sort of family portrait session, some sort of couples portrait session. Yep. There's going to be tables you have to take pictures of. There's going to be dresses you have to take pictures of. Like, you don't have like, and then they're going to go on a jet ski and I have to find a way to accommodate for an action camera and not get it wet. Like, you don't have to think about like, how am I going to solve this? Like, when you do commercial shooting, you have to be thinking, how am I going to get a shot of this person swimming laps?
Yeah.
How am I going to get that shot?
Yep.
Oh, we got to rig something in the roof. You don't have to do that when you're shooting weddings. Mm-hmm. It's not the expectation. So I think identifying what are the core elements of a wedding film, but then I think the secondary level would be, what are the ways that I like to tell stories
Yes.
that might be personal, that like, okay, do I cover this on gimbal? Do I cover this handheld? Is a monopod important to me? Do I like tripods? Like, do I need a lav mic on the groom all day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's when you start getting into kind of what you're saying, which is what are the assets I'm going to have on the day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where am I going to be? What's the schedule going to be? What type of couple are they? And then what am I good at?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what's good about the day and what am I good at shooting?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think is the core question. And a lot of people can't really, I think this is the biggest thing I see when I watch a fish out of water kind of edit, like where you know that they watch Sculpting with Time and then like they literally edit exactly like Sculpting with Time. And you're just like, this just feels weird in this barn.
Well, it's funny because even Sculpting with Time's videos are all different.
Yes.
So
they
it's
don't
like
do that.
they don't just go, this is our edit, this is our style, and it's the same kind of cut every time. It's like actually a pretty different cut every single time. Their concept is different.
Well, they're
every single time.
listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're showing up, like you were saying, like, what am I shooting? What am I trying to make today? And that, like, what does the couple let me make?
Right.
What does the day let me make?
Yeah.
If you're doing barn weddings, and this is, I think, where people struggle. Like, I think the best way to shoot a barn wedding is to acknowledge that it's a barn wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to shoot at, like, for us, Ocean Edge,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I take Ocean Edge, which is a Cape Cod resort in our area, I wouldn't call it like super high end. It's fine.
Would you call it overpriced?
I don't know. It seems overpriced.
Seems overpriced.
All I know is that they'll have a wedding on the lawn while the couple's waiting inside watching the wedding.
A different person's wedding.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. Yes.
So
it's a wedding factory.
it's a wedding factory that
Yes.
is, I think, considered more high end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is what it is. Like, you'll be on the beach, you'll be shooting, and there'll be someone in the background, like sitting on a beach chair. Like, it's
Some old guy in a Speedo.
yes.
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of wedding you're shooting.
Yeah.
Right. If I try to take that thing and go like this epic song that takes itself way too seriously,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's this like little kid walking in the background
Mm-hmm.
and like people in their bathing suits, it's gonna be weird.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I don't try to make that film when we shoot Ocean Edge.
Yeah.
And I tell our team, like, hey, we're not making that film. We're
Yeah.
making a different film. We're making a personal film.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that's really critically important.
You know, I've noticed that even in our Huxley work. If you don't know, Jason and I have a separate kind of a luxury brand company that people can hire, the two of us personally. And we've kind of fell into that trap a little bit of like trying to create like, okay, now that we're charging people a lot more money, we need to make everything feel like this super luxury product. And actually, most of the work that we've done recently is like Aspen, Colorado. That's not Paris, France. Like, we're trying to cram square peg into a round hole a little bit. And the most success I think we've seen is like, hey, this is what it is. Let's just make it a really good version.
Well,
of
we don't
that.
end up editing what we want to. What we want to make is one thing, and then we end up getting the film in the edit bay. And I don't think we've screwed up on the shooting side really so
Yeah.
far, but we could have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like that's the thing. We're like, well, this is who these people are. This is what we're doing. We have to cover it this way.
Yep.
Right. And I think a lot of wedding filmmakers, they don't have a strong vision. And I think we're not talking about developing a vision, I guess. Like, that might be a different podcast.
Yeah.
Is like, what do you want to make? But I would say, just in a general sense, shoot the wedding that's there, not the wedding that you imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's fair to maybe try to stretch yourself and stretch the couple a little bit, but trying to make something that is just like I said, square peg, round hole. Like, I've seen that happen over and over and over again. Like, this person's trying to make this wedding film, but the assets they have is just entirely different.
Well,
thing.
and you got to be ready to pivot on the fly too, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you were like planning on having all these beautiful table details and then you don't get them,
Mm-hmm.
or you're planning on having this great portrait session and then you don't get it,
Mm-hmm.
you got to figure out a way to rescue that film
Mm-hmm.
just through shooting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you got to shoot more B-roll or more of this or
Yep.
more of that, and that starts with just a strong vision of what you're trying to make and what you could make. And
Yep.
I don't know, like, how to teach someone that without putting them in the experience.
I mean, that's all it is, though. But I think having the experience is really important. But also, what are you taking out of the experience and taking it into your next
So
experience.
here's my
right?
question then. Say somebody is shooting,
Mhm.
not even Ocean Edge, right? Like just basic country club weddings, maybe even like local hotel weddings.
Sure.
You know, stuff where there's not nice decor because there's no planner. The DJ is bringing in the world's ugliest lights. Maybe the couple isn't super crazy, like dressed up and beautiful all the time, and they're just like, listen, I'm doing the best I can with what I got here.
Mhm.
Like, how do you elevate something that isn't inherently elevated?
Yeah. I do think I just finished editing a photo wedding, and I was just like, there wasn't really much here that I enjoyed. But what are the things that I know this couple will really enjoy? I think there's always something there. Like, maybe not. Maybe they're like, we don't care about the wedding film at all. I think that's going to be pretty rare. Sometimes we've encountered some people like that. But I think, do they care about their family? Do they care about their friends? Do they want it to feel something I always ask people when I'm on the phone with them on a consultation is just like, how do you imagine the day playing out? Is it something that's going to be a rager of a party, or are there sentimental things in the day that matter to you?
Me and my friends, we're going to be crazy on the dance floor.
Every single person.
You've
yeah.
never seen anything like us.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be, I promise, our friends are crazy. Okay, yeah.
Wow, I've never seen dancing like this.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and this is a big thing, is like, I really believe this. In a wedding film, you're not necessarily capturing a person in as far as like who they are. You're capturing the most idealized version of how that person sees themselves, right? So what is that?
Well, yeah.
Are they a party animal? And does that matter to them? Are they like, those are the days when I was in college, we had freedom, it was fun. I want to shoot that in that person and make that person feel like they're that person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, first of all, there is dud people in dud weddings.
Yeah.
So there are weddings that are just not going to be that good.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, most weddings, I think, if you realize that, like, okay, this beautiful decor that, or Tuscany, beautiful location, or this beautiful person who is a narcissist who spends all their time on their body, whatever it is, that is important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just those are just traits of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you show the beautiful decor, you're showing their trait.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing something that's important to them. That's why I think that's actually really important to put in the film. And it's not just planner porn. It's actually, like, for instance, I was talking to a groom the other day, and he talked about all this decor that his mother-in-law is buying for them. And he said, I really want that in the film because I want to be able to tell people, I want to be able to show my kids how great their grandma was.
Yeah.
So, like, all that stuff is a part of them. And so imagine they don't have that stuff, the stuff that we traditionally associate with good shooting. What are the traits about that person that you can draw out? Everyone has a trait that's important to them, that
Mm-hmm.
makes them unique, that you can feature in the filming. And really, the editing is where you have to be thinking. You have to be editing while you're shooting. You have to be saying, like, okay, we shot a wedding a couple weeks ago. And the couple they weren't the most luxurious couple. You did photo, I did video. They were really, really, really sweet though.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell, like, when I walk in the house, the dad is like, you guys want some party pizza? You guys want spinach pie? Like, I could tell pretty quickly, like, okay, this isn't going to be this type of wedding. But what I have to grab onto is these people connecting with each other and having a really nice time and laughing and having fun. So I have to make a film, throw everything I thought I had out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I have to make a film that highlights these people's connection with their family. So I immediately have to start shooting them talking to each other.
Yeah.
I immediately have to spend more time in the family portrait session. I have to make sure I get a lot of this bride laughing and smiling. So I have to shoot in between.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so as the second I meet the couple and start see how they're interacting, I shot a wedding a couple weeks before that. Second I meet the bride, she will not speak to me. Every time she's not on camera, she's frowning.
Yeah.
And I immediately go, okay, this is a wedding where I have to tell a fake story.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to shoot differently. I have to shoot not the in-between moments. I have to get posed moments. I have to shoot a lot of table details. These people are those type of people. They're not like every time you meet someone, you're not looking for like, what is the fine detail? Like, what is the most extravagant thing? It's like, what makes them special and unique, and how do they want to be perceived?
Yep.
And that's what you're shooting.
How do they want to be perceived? And then, the other thing that I think is important that kind of going back to the part about like, okay, I'm showing up. I don't have to make everything look super pretty, but the connection between people is the important thing here. Oftentimes when you shift to just filming that, they're not going to be in the best light. They're not like the things that we care about. It's going to be much different. And we just like usually like I find myself having to photograph things like, how many times are you at a wedding, Jay, where they're like, make sure you capture all my sorority boys doing our chant. And you're like, oh, okay, your dumb chant. Or that chants are kind of fun, actually.
I don't mind chants, but
some song like, oh, we always listened to the Backstreet Boys when we were in college, so we're gonna listen to the Backstreet Boys.
Except they're not. They're all gonna talk the whole time, and it was gonna be.
You're just like something that you and I will, and anyone listening to this will never ever care about whatsoever. It's just you're not ironic. It's not interesting. It's the dumbest thing in the world to me, but that's important to them. And like being empathetic and like listening to like that's a big part of it.
Well,
Just
you're getting
listening.
into like at that point, you're getting into like what are the assets that I need for this film that they're going to be happy about and not complain, but it will make the film better.
Yep.
They do make the film better. And like being able to communicate couples' values visually and obviously with audio and editing, but you got to capture it first, right? And you got to shoot it well. So like if it's something as simple as like, oh, we're going to be doing this group thing. And then you show up with an 85 mil and you can only see the bride's face. You shot that wrong.
Yeah.
So you're doing you got to make a lot of choices on the day to capture it correctly so that you can tell the story and actually maximize the asset.
There's two different, I always tell people there's two different styles of shooting that I see. And maybe the terminology is different for every person, but, people that document and then people that do more like narrative filmmaking, right? And I think sometimes it can slide a little bit depending on the film, right?
Yeah,
like
somebody might say like documentary versus cinematic,
but
whatever it is.
I don't know. I think it's all cinematic. I think narrative filmmaking to me is like posed, right? So like the bride is going to be sitting down. I've had her put in the perfect lighting. The makeup artist is doing her work. I'm going to do the slow push in to get her. I'm going to make sure all the other bridesmaids are far away. There's no water bottles in the shot.
See, I always call that editorial.
Editorial, yeah, sure.
But it doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. The terminology might be different, but all that is that style of filmmaking. And then the documentarians, like some filmmakers are like, I'm not even going to move the ugly water bottles. I'm going to shoot around it maybe or whatever.
Or just, I'm going to highlight the ugly water bottle. And I'll be like, no.
Don't highlight the ugly water bottles, I would say. That's a mistake. But I would say those are two different styles. And you as a filmmaker, that's something you have to decide like pretty early on. Like what direction do I gravitate towards?
Or what am I going to shoot one way and what am I going to shoot another way?
Yes.
I tend to like to do certain things very documentary style, like, and very raw.
Yeah. Like that family. Like you're not going to film them narrative or editorial style. Like, Dad, hang on while you're pressing your, coat or whatever. Stay there and just look and like, I'm going to do a shot with you. I'm not going to tell the dad of the bride to do a shot like that.
But
Probably
even like,
ever.
okay, you say you do a gimbal push of the room.
Right.
To me, that's more of a cinematic editorial style shot. I like the whiplash of like really connected and then really polished. Like that's what I like to do as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like have a lot of details that are really polished mixed with people that are really authentic. So you never feel like disconnected. I know that about myself. And I know that's what I like. You have to know what you like.
Yep.
You have to know that. And I think that's like the first step to, I think, shooting better is knowing what you're trying to shoot
Right.
and what's available there to that is actually an asset to work with. It's like cooking.
Yep.
It's like, I know what ingredients I have, and so I know what I can make for dinner tonight. And I cannot make a steak. I don't have a steak.
Yep.
It's not in my house. I can't make steak tonight.
Yep.
It's like, it is what it is. And I think a lot of people, they're trying to make steak, and it's like, you don't got steak, you got ground beef, man, make meatballs. Like, that's a lot of people's wedding films. You watch it, it's one of the first things where they're not good at shooting what they have. They're trying to shoot, they're definitely not good at shooting what they don't have, but they're certainly not good at even, I want to be like, focus.
Yeah.
What's in front of you, shoot that as best as you can.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't want to overwhelm people, especially people that are kind of first starting out. These are a lot of questions you have to ask yourself early on, is like, what kind of film am I trying to make here? Like, how am I taking this and processing this information that's here on site, and what am I trying to output into my camera? Like that, these are a lot of hard decisions that really do come from experience. But I think having a general thought beforehand is pretty important.
You got to know,
just informs the decision that you're going to make.
And you got to know when it's not going to work too. I think that's important. It's like, this was my plan. Oh shoot, this isn't going to work. Like, if you don't know what you were trying to do to begin with, you're going to create a disaster.
So the next topic that I thought we could bring up and talk about a little bit was B-roll in a wedding film. I think B-roll is something that separates a lot of really high-end elite filmmakers from their peers, right? And we edit a lot of wedding films for really high-end elite filmmakers. And that's something that you've definitely noticed, right?
I think, defining B-roll is important.
Sure.
In wedding filmmaking, like, B-roll is like establishing shots and detail shots. In some ways, I guess those would be A-roll, right? Because they're essential and important. But, I think most people would say, oh, that's B-roll. Like, B-roll, maybe by that we might mean establishing shots, like I said, details, just things that allow you to give people a sense of place, or maybe are outside of time, that I'll let you fill in. And I think I have noticed that high-end filmmaking is a lot of times about giving yourself choices in the edit. One of the number one things I see internally with our own team when I go and shoot a wedding versus one of our new people is they have usually like 40% less footage than I do. Or the way that they use their time to get footage is way less than I do. Like, we could have a 2-hour block and they'll come back with like 40 gigs and I'll come back with 120 gigs because I'm like, all the good stuff was happening. I was just shooting. There's all this good stuff. And I think having enough content to cover up the seams of a wedding film, and like, let's be honest, wedding days are crazy and you don't have a lot of control over a lot of stuff. And we've all had that film where you're editing it and like, there's a few good moments, but like, you get the couple in, they're not that good in the portrait session, or they're like, we want 5 minutes. You don't know that till it's already happened. And that's the thing I always try to remind people. I'm pretty decent at saying, I'm working with this photographer and I'm working with this couple. This portrait session later in the day will suck. I need to shoot a lot more of X, Y, and Z because I have experience. But it's one of the biggest things I notice with people is like, I get to their portrait session and then they realize it sucked. And then they realize that they can't go back in time and actually shoot the B-roll that they should have been shooting to cover up the fact that the portrait session sucked. Right. And like the films just feel empty. You have like 45-second shots of someone giving a toast because you have nothing to cover it up. You have when we're doing film critiques and I'm like, hey, that shot, you have a lot of shots in there that weren't good. Because I have a rule, like no bad shots. Like, that shot's bad. Don't put it in the film. Like, it's bad. It's a bad shot. There's a bunch of crap in the background. There's a bunch of trash cans and just unflattering angles. And then they always end up saying something like, well, I was just kind of running out of footage. And it's like, you should have shot more. I mean, you could say shoot more B-roll. I think the bigger thing I would say is shoot more. Shoot a lot.
Period.
Like, I think in general, a lot of people think it's like more sophisticated to barely shoot. And I'm like, don't be cute about it. Stop being precious about it. You have plenty of, if you don't have enough cards to shoot the wedding that you need, go spend $400 and buy a bunch more cards. But like, shoot a lot of content and give yourself options.
Yeah. I think there's a few things here. Like you're kind of saying, like B-roll covers a multitude of sins, right? Like the more you get, the more you can kind of fill it. Like if you're like, hey, I'm doing a 5 to 6 minute film and you're like, hey, I really only got 5 minutes here. I need some filler. Like it does kind of make it feel a little bit more full when you have a better B-roll kind of package to throw in there.
It's the easiest way to elevate a meh day that didn't go super well, and it's the thing that will separate you in the market. Is if people are like, wow, my wedding was awesome.
Yeah. The other thing I was gonna say, well, two other things with B-roll is it does give you a sense of place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the best films that I've seen in the last 3, 4, 5 years. I think about that. Always think about when I think about good B-roll in a wedding film. Think about that 31 Films.
One of their many 31 Films Jackson Hole videos.
Jackson Hole.
The one with the horses. Yeah.
The light coming over the hill. I don't remember anything about the wedding. I just remember that awesome B-roll.
I quite literally can't remember the couple at all.
Right, but I was blown away, and they watched a couple watches that one film, Jackson Hole, horses, the whole thing, and the next Jackson Hole couple goes, "Oh my God, I need that.
I need those horses.
I need those freaking horses." That's just based on the B-roll. It's not based on the stupid wedding. It's just based on the freaking B-roll. So like B-roll covers a multitude of sins. It helps you stand out a lot more if you're good at shooting B-roll.
Well, and if you want to be high end and luxury, your B-roll is going to have much more in common with your next couple than the couple.
Sure.
So like you are like, if someone gets married in a spectacular place or has spectacular details or whatever it is, your way of communicating that, I think, is much more in line with what the next couple is going to get than how you shoot the couple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to have, because it's like that couple might have a hard time seeing themselves in the couple in your film, but they will see themselves in your B-roll.
Mm-hmm. And then the last point I was going to make in terms of B-roll is you can always go and shoot B-roll. Like you mentioned it at the very beginning, like B-roll lives outside of time. Like you don't even have to shoot B-roll on the wedding day itself. And you could probably get away with it as long as your weather is similar. I think about a downtown Boston wedding. I could go the next day. I could go the day before.
You could even buy it, I guess.
You could buy it potentially to elevate your film. Like, hey, I just want to show more of the city and give people a feel of like being in an urban center that is Boston. You could do a lot of things there that just, is outside of the wedding day. I think people are overwhelmed on a wedding day, especially when you're first starting. Like, I have to shoot this. I have to shoot this. Boston's this big city. How am I supposed to go shoot a B-roll package that could take 4 hours to do? And then, you don't have to charge people for shooting a better film.
Well, this is the number one reason why you should. This kills people's films is when people charge photography style pricing on their package construction, and they do like 6 hours, 8 hours,
right,
10 hours. It's like, don't freaking do that. That is the worst idea. If you're listening to
this
as a filmmaker, that will ruin your film. I'm not saying you don't have a limit. You need to have a top end limit.
Yep.
Maybe 8-hour package, 10-hour package. Maybe you do it that way. I personally don't.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I'm not going to do anything else with my day. So what do I care?
Yeah. All of our packages are a range. They're a range anywhere from 6 to 10 hours of coverage.
Well, no, specifically what Jared means is our packages literally say 6 to 10 hours. We don't have a 6-hour package and a 10-hour package.
Yeah.
We literally tell them when the story's done.
Right.
That's how we shoot.
Exactly what I'm saying. If I was like, hey, I didn't get enough footage B-roll and it was really cool, or there's supposed to be this great weather the next day, maybe I go back and do shooting the next day, like for a few hours, and then I bring my wife and kid down and we get breakfast, and like that's something I can do.
But I'm also gonna go an hour early and just shoot B-roll.
Sure.
That's the thing is like I'm not like the planner said comment 1, and then I'm leaving at 9.
Yeah.
Yay! 8-hour day. It's like and then you look at the schedule. You're like, when am I gonna shoot B-roll?
Right.
Like that. This is the thing that this is the definition of tripping over quarters to pick up pennies, which is like if you set up a package that helps you make worse films, you should be making your best possible film every time you go out. You should not charge people more for you to get better.
Right.
You should charge them more for just longer films or more work or more coverage or more deliverables, but you should shoot a freaking dope film every time you go out.
Right.
And that means like give yourself time to shoot the B-roll.
Right.
Don't charge someone for like good film.
Yeah.
Like, because that's only hurting you.
Right.
Because the next time you put your portfolio out, like, I'm having a hard time getting good films shot because no one will pay for my top package.
Mm-hmm.
You're an idiot. Why are you structuring it that way?
Yeah.
Structure it in such a way, like maybe you give them like, oh, I'll give you an Instagram teaser, or I'll give you your speeches, or I'll give you this. But I'm not going to deny myself that sweet, sweet B-roll.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to actually make my film sick, because it's like, okay, you might not be willing to pay for this film, but if I shoot good enough, someone else will, and I can elevate and I can make more money.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The next topic that we had talked about was having good presence, right?
Yeah.
On the wedding day. How does having good presence force you to become a better filmmaker?
I think it's like, how does a good bedside manner help a doctor to be a better doctor, right?
Totally. I think it's a good comparison.
If you are weird,
there's a lot of wedding filmmakers out there who qualify as that.
Well, not all of them make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, totally. Not all of them, but there are.
But if you are
plenty.
weird and make people uncomfortable, not weird and inspiring, but weird and make people uncomfortable. If you don't know how to talk to people, if when you're around people and you're shooting them, they're thinking, wow, I hope this person leaves soon. I don't think that's most people, but like that's an extreme example, right? Your footage will suck. And so whatever range you find yourself on, the ability to connect with your couples and the vendors around you. And I think your presence on the day is how you dress. It's how close you stand to people. It's the volume you speak at. It's when you choose to talk and when you don't choose to talk. And I don't know that I think there's probably some definitive bad things you can do.
Yeah.
But I also think like there's things that you do that maybe are more about you, like how to get the best out of you, how to get the best out of the type of film you make. You know, when I shoot with certain photographers, I know I don't have to do anything. And like if I bring certain things to the table, it's going to overwhelm the couple. You know? And so like I'm calibrating my presence based on who I'm shooting with. And some photographers, they're really low key and everything's, oh, wow, guys, so great. And I know like the couple wanted to hire that. So I just shut up.
Yeah.
Right. I try to match their energy, you know, and I know like there is a moment though, when I'm shooting with certain people that I'm like, I have to step in too, where it's like, I have to say, hey, do you mind if I do this? And I have to lift the energy a little. But I think it's like, you have to know that you're like how you're conducting yourself is affecting your footage.
Yeah.
Like even something as simple as this, if you're talking the whole time and you're saying like, oh, I want to shoot people interacting and they're interacting with you, you're killing your footage. Shut up.
Totally. So, and they're looking at your camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird. I would say the other thing is a lot of people trying to shoot more of that editorial style. Like if you don't have that trust with a couple, like it's not going to look the way you want it to look. Yeah. You're going to be asking, they're going to look uncomfortable.
Especially on video.
Yeah. If you're asking them to do a lot of weird things, like they're not going to trust that you know what you're doing. If you've made them feel weird all day, like, wow, why is he asking us to do all this stuff? This is annoying. Then it's going to be really hard for you to get the shots that you want. And you got to understand too, like, I think a lot of filmmakers, especially early on in their career, they kind of expect, you know, brides to just be models and be professionals. And just like, they don't understand the fact that, no, this is like just a living human being who's not used to being on camera. Like they're not going to feel comfortable with you doing all this stuff. And so when you do a lot of asks, you're going to slowly realize like, hey, this person's feeling more and more and more uncomfortable and more annoyed with me. And obviously you're not going to get good footage if that's the case.
Well, even something is like as simple as like, I have 2 or 3 poses I ask for every wedding, right? And they're based on the fact that I know how to communicate what I want in a way that I can say it really fast and the couple doesn't feel dumb doing it. There are things I would like a couple to do, and I'm just like, I don't know how to ask for that. So I don't ask because I don't want the couple to be uncomfortable. But even when I ask them to do this simple little thing, something as simple as like how I react to what they do, like, wow, that's exactly right. That's amazing looking. Like you being supportive to the person. And like a lot of photographers do this. So many filmmakers rip on photographers, and I want to tell them, like, at least they know how to run a portrait session.
Mm-hmm.
You suck at running a portrait session. Like, that couple thinks you are so irritating, and you're making them so uncomfortable. Maybe you should take notes. Like, they're literally, like, doing something that you can't do. So, like, I always am looking at photographers and trying to take notes. How are they getting couples to relax? How are they getting to pose? Like, and I do also make notes when a photographer's reacting really positively to stuff that I hate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'm like, I don't think that looks good. I think that looks like really bad.
Yeah.
Like, it looks weird. Like, this is uncomfortable. Those are times I need to be a little more present on the day, because I'm like, all right, this is going to look like crap. But that being said, I also know I can't push it too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that couple they already did an engagement with that session with that person. They have an expectation of what it means to get their portraits taken.
Yep.
And it's not me.
Yep.
It's that photographer.
Sometimes you got to think about it like, what does someone's trust tank look like too? Like, a lot of times I'll work up my personality throughout the day, not really ask a lot, like just help, make jokes, make people feel comfortable all day. So then when I really want to do something that I'm like, this is going to make them feel uncomfortable, at least my trust tank is full, and I can be like, hey, I'm not asking you guys to do something that might make you feel a little uncomfortable, but I promise it looks awesome. I want you guys to do this. Both look at my camera. I'm going to do a move. And then, that's it. Then I do it really quick, and I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing, guys. That's all. I got it in one take. Great. And then we can go to the cocktail hour. That's how I'm going to spend that currency. Right. So just,
it's like, my dad always says, put change in your pocket with people.
Other times people are just like, no, this is us. Like, you can have your way with us. Like, do whatever you want. Like, we are going to feel comfortable. And like, if that's the case, I'm going to hop in a lot more.
Yes.
So just read the freaking room a little.
The other thing I think is, like, your presence with the other vendors really matters. Like, if there is if there is tension with that person's photographer, you cannot allow that to be the case, because it will bleed into your presence.
Totally.
Like, they will ice you out. The photographer won't like it. The couples, they might not even see it or hear it, but it's going to affect the dynamic. So you have to do everything in your power. And we're talking about shooting better, right? So hear us saying, this isn't about sales. This is about the images you capture. Your presence will dictate how good your images are. They will, especially portraits, but really kind of everything, right? Like, if you piss off everyone, good luck shooting good toasts. It's going to affect your ceremony, every single thing you do in that day. So, like, something as simple as, like, how you communicate to the photographer, how you want to cover the ceremony. That's presence. Like, hey, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that. Like, a lot of times, most of the time, people are complaining about their shots getting blocked. I'm always like, if you were a more considerate person, you wouldn't have that shot getting blocked all the time. I'll tell you this. Doesn't happen to me.
I don't ever get my shots blocked. Like, ever. Sometimes
a person will walk in front of a toast.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of a tough environment for everyone. There's tables everywhere, and there's only so many good angles. And I'm giving them such good light. Of course, they want my angle.
Yeah.
So
photographers do like the 60Xs, man.
Yes,
they do.
but in general, like, I don't have these major issues. Some of it is because I don't care about them walking in front of my wide shot a few times.
Yeah.
But some of it is because of how I communicate with the photographer, how my presence is, even when I'm not talking, where I'm just actually planning on being.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know this is what they need, and I don't want them in my shot either. So I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, how you handle the day does affect your shooting. Even if it doesn't seem like it's directly correlatable, it is.
Yep. Item number 4 that we talked about was just shooting better events. So ceremony.
Like your event coverage in general.
Your event coverage. Ceremony, toast, dances, cake cutting, bridal bouquet toss.
Kind of what we talked about earlier, which are like the assets, but like these are like the boring things that we all take for granted.
Well, and that's the problem with coverage here, is a lot of people are just like super complacent when it comes to this kind of coverage. And this is actually something that we've taken, I think, to another level this year. in terms of like not only how are we shooting these, but also the other element is like how are we lighting these events too. That's a big component, and a lot of people are super complacent. Like we get a lot of footage from plenty of other filmmakers again, because we do our own outsourcing. And you just realize even the really high end people sometimes have bad coverage of these events,
With
right?
like one camera rolling and
Right.
like, Ray Roman said something in chat the other day during the live stream. He said, you need to think about your toast as one of the most important elements that you capture on camera, referring to a person who shot a bunch of toasts and dances, like with a bunch of crap in the background and like shooting the wrong direction and just very unflattering angles and just really sloppy kind of shooting. And he was like, this is the gold. Like if you shoot a toast and they say something great and it also looks great, like that's definitively a roll.
Yes.
Like you need those moments to look good. And the tricky part is you are doing a live event with very limited setup time. So you do need to have like a scheme that you're operating off of. Like this is how I shoot X, Y, and Z, and try to do it the same way every time, in my opinion. Instead of always spending an hour setting up. I think it's not practical, right? But that being said, you need to care how it looks, and you need to care how much coverage you have. You need to make sure you have cutaways. You need to shoot this in a thorough way because you need this stuff as it's like that is your story, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes a big difference. I think most of us are going to be using toasts in our wedding film. The majority. Some people are more music video
I think
style.
almost anyone would use a good toast.
Yeah. Yeah. And so doing a good job, and what do I mean by a good job? Like what are some elements I think of good shooting something like a good toast or a good ceremony that you would say? What are some elements there that are pretty important?
Honestly, the thing I see the most is people aren't rolling early enough.
Sure.
They're like
Doing pre-roll?
Like it's like the person's like, "Hey guys, thank you so much," and then they start like, which is indicative of like someone scrambling.
Yeah.
Right. Don't be
being ready.
scrambling.
Sure.
Like when something's about to start, you should be ahead of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that means knowing your schedule. That means communicating with the people. That means being present.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't go to the bathroom. Like if you look and it goes like, okay, they're going to do, this is a classic conundrum. First dance, welcome toast. Then we're going to do, the planner goes, then you're going to do serving salads, and somewhere in the salads, we're going to do the toast.
Yep.
Oh, it says 15 minutes. They're not going to wait 15 minutes. I tell my guys all the time, I'm like, I don't care what this says.
Mm-hmm.
The second everyone has a salad,
yeah,
they are going to do a toast.
Yep.
And they might tell you they're going to tell you, and they might not tell you.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many moving parts here. Just stay by your camera, please.
Stay by your camera or push play 5 minutes before then. Like
record, you mean?
Yeah.
Don't push play.
Yeah,
If you push
don't
play, that would actually hurt you.
Yeah. Push record. Yeah. And just doing that pre-roll, because I agree. You don't want to be scrambling, because if you're scrambling, you don't have time to even set
think
up
about
your
a
camera.
good shot. You're just trying to get any shot.
I've known, plenty of toasts that I've shot is like, I have my camera set up, looks perfect. And then everyone sat down, it looks good. And then I move away for 1 second, I come back, and someone shifted their chair over, just like, it could be like 5 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're in my shot.
Yeah, I think you're talking about like, that's the next level, right? Which is if you're ready early enough, like there have been plenty of times, say I'm shooting that setup like you're talking about where the two people are sitting in front of the bride and groom's face. I might tell that person like, hey guys, during the toast, would you mind scooting here? And then they'll say like, oh, is this good? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Like I'm spending that time where other people would be going to the bathroom, getting ready to make sure. And then like I'm saying to the person I will have a conversation with the people giving the toast. Say, hey, are you guys planning on moving around? I don't tell them do this. I don't really love that when people are like, do this.
Yeah.
It's like, do whatever you want, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then they'll say, because what they'll usually say is, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And I'll say, I would want you to just stand right by that mic stand and not move.
Yeah.
That'll be great for me. Thank you. 90% of the time, that works like a charm.
Yep.
Like, I think to shoot better, it's a mix of anticipation and also pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are they going to do? Like, this is a big thing for me. Shooting recessionals, right? On my gimbal. And I'm walking back. and I'm not matching the groom's feet.
Mm-hmm.
I want to walk the same pace they are, so I don't have to do that thing where I way past them, stop, like, or they like stopping, like, and I'm just going back and forth, and it's just not like I'm not paying attention to what's going on, and I'm not pivoting to what's going on. But I've given myself like a pre-talk in my head. I would do it every time I go, like, okay, just pay attention to how they're walking.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go too fast. Don't bump into the photographer. Don't do anything that's going to make me have to recompose my gimbal in that shot. And I think like thinking about what could happen with a toast or any kind of moment you're going to be capturing, that's really important. Like, what will I do if this person walks around the dance floor?
Mm-hmm.
So many times I see people like, all right, set it up all great. But then they walked around the dance floor. Okay, if you weren't 100% positive that they were going to stay exactly where you put them, why did you set your lights beam so narrow?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you flood your light?
Yep.
Why don't you set up your tripod head so that you can move it? Why do you have it all locked down? Like, you need to make sure that whatever's going to happen in front of your camera, that you have anticipated the things that could happen. And I think a lot of people, that's really hard for people.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think having a good game plan is key. But then also being able to fall back on your plan B. Like, this is the thing. Like, usually plan B, to me, plan B is a gimbal. Like, let's talk about a dance, right? You set up, like you said, I set up perfectly. I have my cameras on one side. I have my lights on the other side. So I'm shooting shadow side. Looks great. Everything is awesome. I have these different camera angles. I'm not doing crossfire. My audio sounds great. Everything is rolling. But then all of a sudden, they're standing up and they're even like dancing off the dance floor for some reason. They're dancing on.
Or the worst is when they're doing a special father-daughter dance where they just turn around and face the audience and look at them the whole time.
Yeah.
And you have your camera just on their backs.
Whatever it may be, it happens. Like, I've had to happen before. Exactly like I said, everything is lit. I have the whole dance floor lit in a way that no matter where they are on the dance floor, they'll be lit well. But then it's like a dance with grandma, and the groom is like walks over to her so she doesn't have to walk as far.
We're going to dance right next to this chair.
People, we're going to dance just in the middle of the tables. Like, and you're like, you can't predict that. People are just like, they're not predictable. Like, you can predict probably 90% of cases. In that case, I would grab my gimbal and I'm over there. And then hopefully my assistant is bringing a camera over, scurrying, but I'm able to cover it.
Well, that's why exactly every time something starts, I'm always holding my gimbal.
Yeah.
Because I never know what's going to happen. It doesn't mean that I'm swooping around the dance floor the whole time.
But I would also say with a gimbal, too many of you guys are treating the gimbal like an A camera. Like, you only record your toasts, you only record your first dances, parent dances, whatever, only with the gimbal. And it's moving around, it's jittery, it's like, it's not professional.
It looks like crap.
It looks like garbage. I would say the gimbal is the backup for those, and maybe a swoop shot here and there to add to those.
To me, the swoop shot is
cameras.
B-roll, by the way.
The swoop shot is B-roll. It's not A-roll. Like,
to me, the swoop shot is like the hero shot that I use in the highlight film that I don't really care if I don't get it.
No.
Like, there are plenty of times where I don't get that shot because it's not appropriate or I don't have time.
Yep.
Because some crazy thing happens and I have to be locked down.
Right.
Most of the weddings I shoot, I'm the only shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, and it's fine. I don't have any issue with it. And I will say this too, in terms of coverage, talking through your transitions is really important. Like, I have a big discussion with anyone who's second shooting with me about what are the major transitions of a ceremony. It's like the processional is this crazy thing, right? It's like, there's people walking down, there's this, then the bride walks down, then everyone stands. So the conditions change like 3 times during that part. Then they have a handoff. You could have a time during a processional where all your cameras are set up and every single one of them is covered because everyone is standing. Good luck finding a tripod that will go over everyone.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy who sets it up that high either. You look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do when I have, what's my plan? When everyone stands up and I have no coverage, how do I shoot that handoff?
We had
what's your plan when no one tells them to sit down?
Right. During the ceremony. Yep. We had one of our guys this summer, unannounced. The groom got up and is like, "Hey, I'm gonna play a 3-song set," and he like grabs the band's guitar or something and he just starts riffing, and is like, hey, I'm just gonna play music. And then the groom afterwards was like, hey, I want my 3 songs edited together as a separate video. And we're like, oh my God, I hope we covered that well. Like, we don't have a way that we ever cover that. And especially everyone is standing, you're on the dance floor. So it's not like you can get a wide shot on a tripod because people are just swarming it. So it's like, how do you do that?
Well,
Like,
even another moment that I think you should know better about this.
Yeah.
Experienced person would ask this question and find this out. But I find a lot of inexperienced people, first dance, right? They have introduced the wedding party. Luckily, most people are only introducing the bride and groom now, which is great.
Yeah, that's great.
But a lot of people, this is like the
You
part
don't want to see people use the bouquet as the
Oh,
football anymore?
freaking hate it, dude.
Who do you cover? Do you cover the thrower or the catcher?
Honestly,
of the
I'm not
floor
gonna
of the-
lie. I don't care about covering.
I have never had, well, maybe once I've had people be like, can you send us the whole introduction?
I do cover it, but if it sucks, I'll tell them you should not do that sucky thing.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to cover, and I don't care. If I don't have to put it in my film, I would happy.
Yes.
That being said, what does happen is experienced person would find this out. Inexperienced person finds it out the hard way. They come in and everyone starts circling the dance floor, right? And you can see the person going chick, 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 and going around, and eventually they're right in front of your camera.
Yes.
And like, I am going to tell, like, there are times I'll even go outside, tell the wedding party, hey, I heard you guys are circling the dance floor. If you're in front of my camera, could you not be, please? Or I'm going to tap you on the shoulder. Like, I'm letting them know, like, hey, I need to record this first dance. So I'm going to ask you to please, and if that person gives me attitude, I'm just going to say to them, excuse me. Like, I am not going to let them stand in front of my camera.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be ready for them to stand in front of my camera. And I'm going to expect that no matter what I say, they're still going to stand in front of my camera.
Yep.
That's up to you. The other thing I'm going to do is say, gimbal person, whether it be me or whoever it is, you need to be ahead of the crowd, stand in front of someone so that in case they stand in front of my A and B cam, I have time to adjust it.
Yep.
Like, that is what we mean by better coverage.
Yep.
Considering what is about to happen ahead of time, having a plan for A, B, and C. Well, this is like the absolute crap scenario. This is the best case scenario. And then adjusting before you lose any of that gold. This is the thing I think inexperienced people also don't do with events. The other day I was at a wedding and we had 30 minutes to do family portraits, a room clear, stunning details, cocktail hour, and a portrait session. And my second shooter, I was like, do this, do this, do this. He's like, you're just giving me a lot of instructions. I'm like, that's because that's what's happening. We have to cover all this. We have to this is 30 minutes and I'm going to use every one of these shots and I have to get them. And I'm going. Like I'm like, okay, I got to do 10 minutes and I have a game plan. I'm going to do 5 minutes with the family, go inside, do this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm bouncing. And by the time I get to the set, like, they're done. There's nothing to capture for 30 minutes. I'm kind of standing around doing nothing, but I got all this important stuff and I had to get it and I covered it exactly how it had to be covered. Some people go, well, I chose not to do this. I'm like, why? Why didn't you just use your time better? You should have walked a lot faster, ran, shot like a madman for 30 minutes instead of like, doo, 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 doo. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I think what you're saying and how this applies to a lot of people is just like being on the same page with your second shooter or assistant is huge here.
Planning and photographer too.
Planning and photographer too. The whole team has to be on the same page. It's very important. I can't tell you how many people are just like let those things kind of like happen and then they just react to it. I think having a good game plan is key. Having your backups and then just having good communication is huge. Like something happens, you have to know how your second shooter is going to react so that they're covering or you're covering while they're adjusting, right?
And like knowing. This is where the shooting comes in is like, not only do I know where I need to be or how long I need to be there, but I know exactly how I'm going to shoot that room before I go in. So because I know I have 5 minutes to shoot this beautiful ballroom. I'm going to do 2 push-ins. I'm going to do some stuff around the florals and then I'm going to do some close-up and I'm going to leave. I'm done. I got all the shots I can get. I got to go. This photographer's going to leave. And I think ultimately event coverage is a lot about, we are the ones riding the wave. filmmakers. We're riding a tsunami. Like, you're not making the waves, you're riding the waves. And so do you want to get wiped out, or do you want to like make it to the shore dry? And I think that's what a lot of it is.
And thrive. Like what Ray said in that comment was just like, this is what essentially what Ray said, and this is what I took from him is, I've made a career of doing this and making this my bread and butter. I think about Ray's footage, and I think about how good his events are, how good his event coverage is.
Yes.
Like the basics. He just covers his basics so well. I don't think of Ray as someone who's like, look at these amazing portrait sessions he shot. He does those really well. When I think about Ray, he's so solid when it comes to just covering his events. And then also, we're talking about shooting better to make more money. Ray shoots more of those events and sells the crap out of those event edits.
Yeah, you want to make more money, get good content without bugging people.
Sure.
That's what it is. Is like, that is what planners and most couples want. And the best way to do that is to just cover the freaking event that they're already doing perfectly and not ask them to do a million extra things.
Well, and his events are covered so well, he'll send people an example. Here's what a ceremony of mine looks like. They'll be like, wow, that looks great. We definitely want that. Like, some people might want that, whether it looks like crap or whether it looks good, whatever. Maybe they don't care. But when it looks really good and you cover it really well, it's just going to sell itself that much more.
Well, you can use it in your film.
You can use it in your film, but you can also sell it as a separate a la carte item.
Yeah.
Kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. Do a good job and you got more.
Yep. So this is kind of how we want to close, I think, this podcast is just talking about planners and how planners kind of come on board and thwart this system a little bit, right? Because if you've worked in weddings for any amount of time, you know, once you get to a certain price point, there's this threshold, the planner threshold, where you're not going much farther. You're not going to charge $10, $15, $20, $50,000 for a wedding film unless you're working with a planner, right? So how do you feel like the planner threshold comes into play in terms of charging couples more money?
You know, I think maybe the question is, how does a planner affect what you could shoot too?
Yep.
Right? Shooting better. And I think,
because if you shoot more and you shoot better, you shoot this amazing wedding film, you have the potential of not being able to charge more because you're not getting the clientele that this planner.
yeah, it's like a
the
chicken and egg
gatekeeper.
thing, I think, because it's like, planner weddings look better. Bottom line, they do. I think we have enough experience to say that definitively. That planner weddings look better. There's usually more time put into the decor.
Yep.
Everything. Right? And so,
The schedule is tighter.
yeah, if you don't have a planner, you know, are you able to shoot as well? That's the question. And if you want to work with planners, you know, how do you, is it chicken and egg? Is it good footage precedes getting these relationships, or relationships precede the good footage? I guess I don't totally know the answer to that too, but I know that, like, if you want to maximize and make more money, you need to be considering, how do I work with wedding planners? And I know that if you want to shoot better, you need to consider, how do I work with wedding planners?
Yeah.
And I do think it starts with, wherever you are, shoot it as well as you can. Planners or not, you know. And I think if you aren't working with planners, can you shoot as if you are? And so, like, planner weddings, you got to show that planner porn. You got, like, I'm telling you guys, like, some planners, like, are really focused on, like, I'm going to give my client who they want. But trust me, a lot of planners are like, I want to work with someone that's going to help me promote my business. Right?
And not be super annoying to work with.
Yeah, not be annoying to work with. So if you don't know how to shoot rooms and table details and the things that a planner's involved with, good luck working with those people. Not to say that they always look at it, but in general, I think it's more important to them how you are to work with on the day of. But I would say a skill you want to work at, even if you're not in that place, is shoot as if you're working with the planner. How do I show this person's dress and invitations and shoot that kind of details? How do I show tables and show a room off and show a location off in a really nice way? I think there's things you can do that will kind of signal to a planner, like, oh, if I work with this person, they're going to do a great job for me and the couple. Right? I don't know. Like, I find that to be challenging, right? Because a lot of times I don't think planners really look at our work you know? But then sometimes they do. Like there are times where the planner's like, oh, your work is so much better than X person, or I like working with you, or hey, can I have that coverage from that one thing? I want to do a reel.
Yep.
So it's like they look at it when they want to look at it.
Yep. Yeah, I think the question for a lot of people is my work good enough to be able to present to a planner, or am I just not even networking enough to be able to work with planners?
Yeah.
Those are probably the two places that most filmmakers find themselves. Like, why can I not charge more money when my films are pretty good? Well, it's probably because you're not marketing enough to planners.
That's probably what it is.
But then also, some people just aren't good enough to be in front of planners yet. And we talk about it all the time. Like, you don't want to blow your shot, right? Like, if you aren't,
you have one chance.
if you're not good enough, and you know, some planner looks at your work, they're not going to give you a second shot. They're just going to be like, yeah, they're just not that good. And
I think if I was to say, you should be a good shooter before you try to be really good at networking.
Sure.
And I think networking is more important to maximizing your profits. Like, you can be the best shooter in the world, but if you aren't good at networking, it's going to cap you a really low price point.
Yep.
That being said, so you like, because the best shooter, the best highest earners in the world aren't necessarily the best shooters, but they've crossed a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good at shooting, editing, capturing events.
Yep.
They're not inferior.
Yep.
They're good, solid, probably actually great relative to a bad shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So being a really good shooter and creating a really great film, do that first. Make sure you focus on that, because as much as I say, like, couples don't care about your film, planners don't care about your film, I kind of think that's kind of true in the sense they, you know, it needs to be good, but doesn't need to be the best thing in the world.
there are other factors.
But it has to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get in front of a planner and say, I would love to work with you, and you go to a networking event, you meet these people, oh, they're so nice. And they go to your Instagram and then they're like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's bad. That doesn't look good. That doesn't sound good. That doesn't feel good. Like, if you are early in your career, really focus on making sure that you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot good stuff and you will make more money. Like, I do think shooting well and editing well and creating a great film, as much as we kind of like talk about it's not the most important thing, I do think for a long time in your career, it is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Until you get to that point where you're ready to like go into the top of your local market, I think shooting well is the most important thing that you can do to improve your business. And when you are like very confident, like, I'm the best shooter and the best editor in my price point, in my market, then I think networking and sales, they start to become the most important thing. And I think we kind of bypass that and assume a lot of people are great shooters and great editors. You can't fake it.
No.
You can't fake good shooting. There's a reason why, like, I don't know, like NST films or some of the even more nefarious ones, like, I don't know, La Petite Four or Copper Stallion, or who's the one we were dealing with locally?
Oh, yours truly.
Yours truly
Media.
If you're listening to this, we don't like you.
You're douchebags, man.
But
We're re-editing one of your films right now. Called you out, man. We're re-editing one of your films that your team provided to a client.
but there's a reason why those films like cause issues
Yeah.
after the client gets them, because
Right.
they're not good.
Right.
And the client doesn't know that. And it's like, so shooting matters a lot. And like, if you're, I always see people like, they get a film and they're like, oh, couple maybe they return my film. They're just not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And like, they're so demanding. And I'm like, quite literally go watch the film and I'm like, this film sucks. Like, the fact that you don't know that your film sucks, the couple does and I do, like, make a good film. Like, you know, obviously everyone has hell couples, but like most of the time, if you're getting a lot of bad feedback from people, the problem is you.
Yeah. And if you need help learning how to make a better wedding film, submit to WFS Live, our weekly film critique session every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern
like
Standard
that
Time. Nice little transition.
Yeah.
As we wrap this shit up, I'm going to Ireland tonight, so I'm in a hurry, dude.
Yeah, get out of here.
thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Wedding Film School Show. As usual, subscribe. We have our YouTube channel just dedicated to the Wedding Film School Show, in addition to Wedding Film School, the channel.
Old school Wedding Film School.
Where we do a lot of our normal kind of YouTube content. We just did a behind the scenes that was released last week. It's really, I think it's really great. Clearly, we're biased, but I think it's...
I actually think it's one of the best ones ever made.
Well,
in the industry?
Possibly.
Pretty good.
I think it's pretty good. And, you know, I honestly, I think people learn a lot from those behind the scenes. Like, I love putting them out there. They're a lot of work. Jason's been working on it since February, probably, to be able to put it out. Off and on, I would say, when the motivation came. We do have another one that's probably going to be released pretty shortly. Not shortly,
months.
but soon-ish as well. But, yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Wedding Film School Show. And we will see you right here again next week.